Hey everybody, I have a video I'm making today. Not generally the types of videos I want to make. This is in response to the Facebook post that I put up a few days ago referring to hyperbolicism. The actual point of the post, which 98% of people didn't get, was not referring to the UN speech. I actually thought about using Kavanaugh, the Kavanaugh hearings, the Trump-Russian collusion. I even thought about going newer with the Ukraine stuff. It just happened that, topically speaking, the UN thing came out, and listening to her talk, there's a mass amount of hyperbole. So I used that. I actually had considered putting up the post without any sort of meme or link underneath, just hyperbolic, and the definition is, and see how many people would just let whatever emotions and, for lack of a better way of putting it, insanity drive them into whatever frenzy. Also, when I put up the post, I had set a rule to myself ahead of time that I was going to put up this post. I would respond for 8 hours, and then I would let it go and see how many people would essentially eat each other there. And the results were disappointing. Effective, but disappointing. The whole point was to essentially show how emotional and hyperbolic people will get without having the due diligence to do any research. That's why I decided to add the link, because I figured it was just too vague without it. So, people didn't get that. They didn't realize. I guess in some ways it was a troll. It was trying to get people to react emotionally and illogically, and in many cases it did. I did go ahead and elicit what I was doing at one point in the comments. Anyway, I should get on before really getting into the breakdown. I'm now going to break down the actual UN thing. Before I do that, I should probably give a little background, as some people don't know, and some people actually commented. Who am I? What have I done? So, I was born at home in Berkeley in 1976 from two liberal parents, both with multiple PhDs, who originated from around Chicago, Illinois. Both of them moved out there in the early to mid 70s for school. Actually, both my parents did end up going to UC Berkeley for a while. So I was born at home in the most liberal place in the world, at arguably the most liberal time ever, the free love era of Berkeley in the 70s. That being the case, it has given me a good starting point to see where my fellow Democrats have gone as far as the Overton window. If you don't know what that is, look it up. I'm not explaining it here. Those results through recent years has been disappointing as well. I will also touch on the fact that mental illness is profound in my family. Not directly in my bloodline, but my half-brothers. I have 3 half-brothers from a stepdad who raised me since I was a child. My next younger brother, Joshua, had dealt with mental illness for years. In 2007, in a mental rage and in mental instability, Josh had an episode and stabbed my brother Jonathan to death at our family house a while after my mom and my stepdad had passed away. John is now dead. Joshua has been locked up in a facility for years, and I take care of him. So anybody who wants to claim that I don't know, that I haven't been around, let me also note, I'm a U.S. Army veteran. Not only that, a combat veteran, having enlisted in the tank corps from 94 to 97. Again, if I if you think I don't know what I'm talking about, if I'm not experienced, that I haven't seen the world, if you can argue you've seen more. You obviously can. There's a lot of you who have probably traveled, seen more things than I have. But you cannot argue that I don't know what I'm talking about, that I haven't been there, that I haven't seen it, that I'm not familiar with these mental issues, and that I'm not thinking of this from a liberal perspective. In fact, ultimately, I believe in liberty above all else. I think everybody should have the right to decide what they want to do and how they want to live their life, provided they are not hurting or are not detrimental to anybody else in their pursuit of that goal. So, without further ado, before actually hitting into the video, as it turns out, due to certain complications and the way YouTube works, I'm not going to be able to I wanted to show the video. I actually have it down here, and I was going to set in inserts and show her talking. There's a good chance I will get banned for that. Some other people have. So unfortunately, I'm going to go ahead and link. I'm using Vice's footage of it. So I will have the link to the Vice video of the UN speech below. I will also be referring to timestamps. Those timestamps will be marked below. Unfortunately, those timestamps will lead to spots in this video. That's not what those timestamps are for. The timestamps will correspond with Vice's video that the link is down there. So, and one last thing before getting into it. Anybody seeing how hyperbolic people get, if any of you, and I hope you do, want to challenge these ideas, don't be that person to say something ambiguous and stupid. Don't be that person to just dislike and not say anything. Add a comment. Contribute to the conversation. That's what this is all about. Having a conversation. That's the whole problem with this in the first place. Let's have a logical conversation. Let's not everybody freak out, panic. Have a conversation. Say specifically what you have an issue with, why you have an issue with it, and we can have a conversation, a dialect regarding that issue. If there's 3 issues in this you have an issue with, let's take each one individually. People want to lump shit together and nothing gets done. People lump things together, they can't get things solved, then they get frustrated, and then, the other person just doesn't understand me. Well, if you define and specify your argument, and you deal with each facet individually, in the long run, things tend to run a lot smoother, and your arguments and debates tend to be a lot more productive. Then the one other thing I'll note is that there's a lot of people who just simply, and you need to start a conversation by asking, what evidence can I present that will change your mind? Because as it turns out, a lot of people don't want to change their mind. You can give them empirical evidence. Who is Greta Thunberg? Well, Greta Thunberg is a 16-year-old Swedish activist who has 2 parents who are also environmental activists, who hired her an environmental activism coach by the name of Louisa Marie Neubauer. So, this is not a girl who came up with these ideas on her own. These have been things pushed by her parents. Her parents actually admit that she has chronic depression and anxiety, couldn't go to school, couldn't eat for 2 months, or even speak for periods of time. In Greta's Wikipedia, she self-admits to having autism, specifically Asperger's, which is classified in the DSM. That means, technically, it is a mental illness. She has OCD. Once again, certain OCD behaviors are listed in the DSM. So that can be classified as a mental illness. She has selective mutism. Her words, her acknowledgement, DSM-5. And her parents add about the chronic depression and anxiety. So, By her own admission, she's suffering from mental illness. Her parents admit she's suffering from mental illness. The DSM acknowledges that the things that they claim are a mental illness. So rather than getting this child help, they're putting this insanely frightened child. I'm not saying she's insane. I'm saying that they're causing her to panic. Probably the most disconcerting statement that's not in the UN speech, but I found very easily with a simple search, and all this information I did a lot of research. I went through the entire Paris Accord for this. I read through it. In fact, I'm probably going to do a separate video on that because there are some problems with it that I see. And I, of course, looked into her and the movement, and one thing I found that just shocked the shit out of me was this quote: "I want you to panic. I want you to feel the fear I feel every day." That is not the message I want to adults. That is certainly not the message I want to kids. I don't want 8-year-old kids thinking their parents and all their family and all their friends and everybody they know are going to be dead in 8 to 10 years. It's a lie, and these kids do not deserve that. You're traumatizing kids by pushing this agenda. It's not fair to them. This whole hyperbole about we'll get into it in a second. But this hyperbole about us ending them will be why more of these kids have these mental illnesses. Why they will not be ready to deal with society, because they think society wants to destroy them. It's horrible, and the people putting these children in those positions should be ashamed of yourselves. You are despicable, despicable people, and especially the parents. Anyway, without further ado, let's get into the actual UN speech. So the speech starts out pretty funny. We'll be watching you. Okay. Everybody laughs about it, but the look on her face is kind of terrifying. You can tell she's just a scared child. It says, "She shouldn't be here." Or she says, "I shouldn't be here. I should be home on the other side of my ocean in school." Yes, I 100% agree. I think that you should be home. Your parents should be telling you things are going to be okay. That scientists and experts should be the ones in front of the UN. Preferably a group of scientists, preferably nonpartisan, and even some political assigned scientists or declared scientists. A group of them all agreeing, here is the problem. By numbers, here's where they were at, and here is 1 to infinity number of solutions that we propose to fix it, and here are the potential consequences associated with each proposal. Yelling and screaming and getting hyperbolic does not help anybody. Pragmatic approaches with empirical evidence can at least start leading to a solution, or at the minimum open up a dialect to be productive. Moving on. Entire ecosystems are collapsing. She goes through this thing. Yes, there are ecosystems that are collapsing, and I do think that we do have stuff that we need to do about that. At the same time, throughout history, things have come into existence. They become extant, and other things become extinct. Now, do I think humans are speeding this process up? Yes, I think that we probably do. I would love to see adequate science on it, but to yell and scream that ecosystems are collapsing, yes, okay, fine. But which ones, where, how do we stop that? What is it a direct effect of? Again, a scientist, somebody to explain why this is happening and how do we solve it. Um, a little over a minute in, she talks about 30 years of science that has been crystal clear. This is not actually accurate. The science has not been crystal clear. The science has been developing over time as we've done this. In fact, much of it is outdated. In fact, using the Paris Accord, and I'm going to reference document UNFCCC-CP-215-10, which shows by country the amount of pollution and when it was taken. China, just for reference, I think I have it here. Oh gosh. China was something like, oh, here we go. So, by the UN reports, it says that China is at 20.09% of the world's greenhouse gas emissions, while the US is at 17.89. Sounds like we're pretty close, right? Well, if you actually look at it with a skeptical eye, you'll notice that, okay, first of all, these numbers were taken in 2015 before the Accord. They referenced the US percentage of 17.89 from surveys and testing and information that was compiled in 2013, 2 years before. The Chinese numbers were compiled in 2005, 10 years before. Do we see where there might be a discrepancy in the 8 years between when they registered China's pollution and the US's pollution? From the basic statistics and basic searches that I've done, it shows that as of today, in 2019, it's estimated that China is closer to 40%, and the U.S. has actually gotten a bit better. We're down to about 15 to 16%. Now, these are some basic searches that I found on a couple different things that I've added. I'm not saying these numbers are accurate, but it's certainly different than the numbers reflected by the Paris Accord in 2015, and it shows an inconsistency with how the numbers are accounted for and reconciled. So already we're dealing with apples and oranges. So again, I would need a scientist to come up and try to explain it. A little kid yelling and screaming about how the world's going to end, how we're all horrible people, doesn't help. So I do give her credit that yes, 30 years of science is good, but it's not crystal clear. So moving on to another good point of hers, almost 2 minutes in, at 1:53, talks about we'll have a 50% chance to keep the temperature from rising to that 1.5 degrees centigrade threshold they're trying to hit. Originally it was 2 degrees, no more than 2 degrees, but they really are trying to maintain and keep it below a 1.5 global rise centigrade. Here's my issue and why they need somebody. They don't need somebody with mental illness who cannot compromise, cannot see black anything other than black and white. How is it that a 50% chance of achieving it is not as good as 0%? And the other thing that she mentions, well, we'll get into that. I do think that, it is unfortunate that they say, oh, there's a 50% chance, but we still need to address it. So let's do that. And the last positive thing that she said, that I find that she said, was towards the very end. It says, change is coming whether you like it or not. No shit. Change is coming whether you like it or not. Couldn't that be said by anybody to anybody through the existence of the human race through all time since the beginning of verbal communication? That is one of the weakest ending points I could have heard. But anyway, I digress. That's dealing with the good stuff. That's dealing with stuff that I was like, okay, that's okay. Now let's get into some of the things that I was not quite as stoked on. We're going to start out by the first bit of hyperbole. At 22 seconds to 38 seconds, you come to us young people for hope. She then goes on to say, You've stolen our dreams. Who did? Who stole your dreams? Did I? Did the people you're talking there? Did the world leaders there? I mean, you're up here talking. You have an international platform. You're talking, given you're scared of something, which I think is your own personal issue, but and something that's been pushed on your parents. I think it's their fault. But let's face it, none of these people. Before we get any further into it, let's just hit this real quick. How are you going to blame anybody now for causing this? Let's go ahead and let's think of it like this. Let's just go ahead and blow off. You know what? Let's not consider animals a bird. Okay, AOC had the new Green Deal. One of the biggest things she wanted to do is get rid of cows because cows farting is putting too much methane in, and that's causing greenhouse gases. So if we logically follow that back, what we got to say is those bastards that decided to hook up oxes to their plows to plow the fields, those are the guys who need to be brought in front of the UN and held accountable. You guys back in the, I don't know, what was it, even in the ADs? They even wait till AD to learn that they could hook up oxes to plows and plow? I think it's probably, anyway, check me on that. I don't know. But now, you know what? Let's not worry about that. Let's take them out of the equation. You know, even though those are greenhouse emitters, let's take them out. So then we get to the steam. Oh no, let's not get to the steam engine. You know, in fact, the first steam engine variant was created in like 180 or something. But let's take, even if we go to the 1712, first very commercial steam engine that was produced. You know what? Let's not do that because we don't want to blame those people. That's too far back. You know, because we can't blame them. They're dead. Sorry. So then, let's get on to the Industrial Revolution then, right? Wait. There's two of them. Let's go to the first one in 1750. Oh, that's still a long time ago. Those guys aren't alive either, so we can't lay the blame on those people who are pumping out huge amounts of coal and everything. You know, I mean, you study, you know, anthropology and stuff, and one of the things I remember them talking about was the moths, the white moths that kept getting eaten, how the moths evolved to become black because all the trees were covered in soot. So the white moths that would be against the trees to get eaten, the black ones wouldn't. Anyway, I'm going on a tangent. Let's blow off the first Industrial Revolution. Let's go with the second Industrial Revolution, 1880s. I don't think any of them are alive either. Sorry. So all of a sudden we're at a problem where we're blaming, you know, essentially boomers and Gen X for a problem that was created centuries ago and arguably millennia ago, and we're blaming them for creating this problem. Well, one of the things is, and this goes with our 30 years of technology, science. The science is always evolving. We're coming up with new things. You know, one argument that I may bring, and I don't agree with this, but I would put it that somebody with the info might be able to argue it, is if we had the same technology available in the 1750s, we may have found that the air quality was worse then. I'm not saying it is. I'm not defending that. I'm not advocating that that's the way it was, but I'm saying there would be an argument for it. In fact, I could argue that if you were to take a myriad of our technologies from now and take them at any point in the past, we may be surprised by some of the results of what we find. And this is across all spectrums of human life and anything we did. Anyway, that's enough about that. So I just don't like that she's blaming these people for where she's at now. Now, we can bring up, and we have been, the debate about what we need to do to fix it. But as far as I know, that's why the Paris Climate Accord was there. By the way, for everybody who looks at the Paris Climate Accord, it's actually called the Paris Agreement. That's it. Paris Agreement. Everybody calls it the Accord. Don't know why, but hey, whatever. I digress. She then goes on immediately after this to say, people are suffering. People are dying. With that weird cringe. And I cringed at that time. Who? What people? Why are they dying? Like, literally, specifically, what people wear and what specific part of climate change is causing a change in their environment that they're dying. Specifically. It's the thing I hate about these sorts of things, too. When people come up and they throw hyperbole and they throw generic blanket statements, you're not fixing anything. We need specifics. If you want to address and fix anything in the world, you need specifics. Moving on. Right after that, at 48 seconds in, all you talk about is money and fairy tales of eternal economic growth. I read through the Paris Agreement, and the talk of money is talking about the developed countries helping the developing countries by providing financial support, by providing technologies and stuff. This is hard. These are a bunch of different communities. All of them have different ways of looking at the world, different ways of doing things, and they all have different needs based on their geographical locations and their climates, just the standard climates they have. So it's not like everybody has the solution. Russia, that's tends to be a very cold place, does not necessarily have all the facets to help, say, an Pacific island. I mean, maybe they do, but I'm just, I'm speculating here. But yeah, it's definitely discussed in the Paris Agreement, all this. So I don't know, in the fairy tales of eternal economic growth, what does that mean? Who? So then at 125, she moves on to say that you say you hear us, that you understand the urgency, but then she goes on to say that failing to act means that you would be evil. She doesn't want to believe that. Okay, so now you're just name calling. You're pandering. Who do they say they understand? You as the kids? I don't think that that's what they said. I think that they say they understand the scientists. They understand individual countries and what they're looking at as far as the climate change. She's taking this as a personal thing, or like it's an attack against children, as it's an attack against... who knows? But the premise doesn't follow at all. So this, once again, falls into the hyperbole. It's where it's just semantically incorrect. So 213, she talks... This one cracked me up. She's saying a few things, but she talks about aspects equity of climate justice. What the heck is aspects equity of climate justice? Without her looking it up, without her asking her coach or her parents, I would challenge her to define aspects equity of climate justice. Anyway, moving on. And this is this is one that actually kind of really bothered me. Is at 225 she replies that her generation is going to be sucking up our pollution. And this goes back into my previously brought up discussion regarding animals of burden, the steam engine, the first industrial revolution, the second industrial revolution. Everybody has been sucking up the pollution of the generations before since then. We didn't do it to you. You right now, as you watch this, are sucking up the pollution that was put out 1,000 years ago, is still migrating around. It's ever changing. Things are happening. It's just... That's just a stupid, frustrating argument to say that nobody's doing that. That's the way it's been, and that's what they're trying to fix with the Paris Climate Accord. Come up with solutions. We're going to get to that in a moment here. I know this is long. She goes on to talk about having more talk, but not getting anything done. But it's like, what solutions have been brought up? I haven't heard a single solution brought up to this point in the argument. And we won't. At 310 to 318 is what I think is probably the most prominent statement of all those. This is my opinion, but she says, how dare you think it can be solved with business as usual and technical solutions? I'm going to look over the business as usual. I'm not sure what she means by that. And as far as I think I know, that's why the Paris Agreement was instituted, was to have a business as usual sort of thing, keeping the checks and balances and trying to fix it. What I'm going to directly reply to right now is can it be solved? It's not going to be solved by technical solutions. How else is it going to be solved? How else are we going to solve this problem other than technology? Really, from what I can tell, and anybody feel free to chime in, and again, as always, specifics, but one of the biggest obstacles that we face now is energy storage. The fact that we need more efficient batteries and stuff. All the solar stuff that we pull, we need an efficient way of storing all of that energy. If we're getting it from water, we need an effective way of storing all of that energy. We need smaller, better batteries, longer lasting, more efficient, and preferably ones that are more environmentally friendly when they have lived their life expectancy out. Hopefully we can find ways of making them that can be recycled. That seems to be the challenge now. That's all associated with technology. To say that we're not going to solve it with technology is absolutely ignorant. And yes, I will put that into hyperbole. It's beyond the realm of reality. All right, we're almost done here. Sorry it's so long. So, she goes on to say, there will not be any solution or plans presented in line with these figures here today. So at that point, we've just listened to her talk, degrade people, blame people, scare people for 3 minutes and 37 seconds to find out that she also is not here with ideas or solutions. She's not coming to the table with anything. She's just simply here to say, hey, you're all bad people. You're doing horrible things. You've taken my dreams. You've taken my childhood. We're all going to be dead in 10 years. And you're not doing anything. And I don't have anything I can do about it. You're bad. Mom, Dad. Get over it. It's bullshit. So, she finished. By the way, this is it comes off to me as this is a way to just gripe, sling insults, and to fearmonger. I don't think it's acceptable, and it's certainly not beneficial to society. This in no way helped anybody out at all. All it did was get the people who agree with her, who just want to look at whatever numbers people put up and see what they want to see, that are unwilling to do their own research. This is just pandering to them, and they're going to buy it and then not understand why anybody is sincere. Maybe some of them will watch this and maybe get a better idea of why this shouldn't be. And then she finishes up with the changes coming thing I talked about already, and duh, of course it is. This in no way helped anybody. What they did, what this appears to be to me, as with the Parkland kids, this is a way of putting a child up to defend a position that does not have enough information to support the claim or provide solutions. It's full-on pandering, and they do it because if an adult were to go up there and try to do this, they can be scrutinized. They can be critically examined and questioned. When they put a child up there, then they say, they can blame it on, oh, you're picking on a child. don't be mean to the children. They can use all those excuses. Now, you exponentially increase that by having a child that, by her parents' own admission, by her own admission, and by what's presented on Wikipedia and in interviews, how she talks about her Asperger's being a superpower. It means that they now have a blanket. You cannot criticize this in any way, because now you're criticizing a mentally ill child. And it's not fair to the child. It's not fair to her at all. You're bad people. And even more so, it's not fair to the rest of the world. If this is a serious problem, and it very well may be, you do not need hyperbolic, pandering, deathly afraid children talking about it. We need informed, educated scientists with the facts presenting solutions that as a community and as a world we can get behind and figure out how to fix this. That's all I have to say on this. I know it's just my opinion. And finally, any of you who have made it this far, totally, I want to have discussions. Here's what I want. I'd like you guys to leave a comment below. I'd like you to specifically address your points of contention, and let's discuss each one of those. What I hope not to get is a bunch of these soy boys who will give a dislike without saying anything, or say a blanket, oh, you're just stupid, and not explain why. Anyway, thanks for checking this out. Like, subscribe, share. I know that this is super controversial, and I know a lot of people are going to hate it. I don't care. I'll check y'all later.